reason why it got so big is that they did that boy like that. They shot him in the top of his head, left him out there, disrespected him. The people rose up, and the local police was so disrespectful that the people just took over the town.
Since I'm in a position to talk to these kids and they listen, I ain't no politician, but I trapped and did go to prison. Now I'm caught up in a system where the motive's apparent. I'm just a product of the apartments probably built for my parents or my parent, but who caring? They planted go figure. Cop killing me, just a nigga. We protest gorillas.
East St. Louis, you know, it's actually a place where my parents, they actually grew up. My father's from East St. Louis, from the South End. And he would tell me these stories about how East St. Louis wasn't always a black town. If you go to East St. Louis now, it's one of the poorest cities in the country, but it wasn't always like that. About 100 years ago, they had a race riot. But I think people have to understand the context, how the white people had a race riot, basically massacre of black people, and how so many black people ended up from East St. Louis to St. Louis. So I think first you have to understand that the Midwest was the southern farmers and sharecroppers. So black people who couldn't find industrial jobs or jobs that paid a fair wage left the South in what they call the Great Migration in the early 20th century. About 1910, 1915 in that area, black people from the South just started leaving there. You was either going all the way up to Chicago or you was going to St. Louis. And by St. Louis, they meant the St. Louis metro area. So they included St. Louis, Kinloch, Berkeley, and East St. Louis. Black people started coming up because all the white people had left for the war. And so the jobs were available in the Midwest and in industries that they couldn't get it before. And you know, imagine, you know, you making maybe $1 a day and you can go somewhere and make $1 an hour. You know? And so it created an economic opportunity. The white workers who were here were unionizing or becoming unions. They were trying to argue for their collective bargaining rights. But the problem was the black laborers or the black farmers and sharecroppers that came from the South had just as much skills, if not more, and they were willing to work for less. But what happened is some of the unions wanted to go on strike or try to have negotiations, and they would just hire the black workers. And so they started negotiating and working out terms with the black workers. And one day, the white workers just got fed up. They just got mad at like the aluminum and all the mining places. And so the story has it where black workers are actually going in the morning, and sure enough, the white workers are out there picketing, and basically they're saying they're crossing the picket line. The black workers saying, no, we're not. We're just trying to make a living. And when the white laborers attack a black person, I guess they had enough. And so what they started to do is burn hundreds of houses in East St. Louis. It really caused chaos, so much chaos that people from East St. Louis crossed the Mississippi River into St. Louis on what they said was doors and whatever they could find. Like people was taking bathtubs out of their houses and trying to float across the Mississippi River because the city was on fire. I find it interesting that I've never heard this talked about in my school. All these things mixing up, but in 1917, it created a perfect storm and a lot of people died, man. And so I always want to give my heart and my shout out to East St. Louis people, or now in St. Louis and in this region, because I know their descendants were a part of the Fergsuon Rebellion.
Before we get into the East St. Louis riots, man, let me propose this. White man in St. Louis with this black people complex. Let it go, man. Do you realize how ignorant your parents had to be to install it in your head? And do you realize without that badge, you would get your ass served? Do you realize that? Like, we're men of men. You know what I'm saying? Y'all are like men of ignorant ass white boys with guns when ain't nobody else had no gun. You know what I'm saying? Kind of disappointing. It's almost like a bullying type of thing. You get shipped to some other cities where they'll ship your ass back in the box you're supposed to be in. Probably in the box that your mother's in, and your mother's mother, and your father, and your father's father's racial dumbass is that right now, man. Let it go, man. But the East St. Louis riots, that was like one of the most heinous wars like in America. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tory ain't even get a chance to get into like the real details and the juice of shit, the type of attacks that was happening. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about, bro, it was like they was telling the story about a lady that was coming up the street in a cart. She had her son in the cart. When her cart came into the city, it got mobbed by a bunch of white boys. It was her son, and her husband. They stoned her son, stoned her husband to death. Then they scalped her. You know what I'm saying? They threw her in the back of an ambulance truck. When they threw her in the back of an ambulance truck, they threw her in the back of the ambulance truck thinking she was dead. She wasn't dead, but her son and her husband was. So they threw her son and her husband on top of her, so she got to see that. Luckily, she did have a daughter that was walking down the street somewhere else on the other side of town or something, I guess. I ain't sure about that part. But where her daughter, a white store owner, had seen her, get your ass in here, you know what I'm saying? So he put them in there, pulled the little girl in there. But I just told y'all that to give y'all an idea of the type of hatred, you know what I'm saying? Like they left in the air. That's like a haunted house, you know what I'm saying? Until that shit is fully clean, that's gonna forever ring a smell through the city, you know what I'm saying? They even said it was a Negro hanging on every light pole in that city. You know what I'm saying? On damn near every light pole on some street out there. It's ridiculous. And you know what's so crazy? Is that the media does so good a job at painting the black man to look like physically what the white men are mentally. You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by that is that as black kids, as bad as we grow up, and that shouldn't even be held against us because we put in a certain spot to come up a certain way, to go a certain way in life. So as black kids, we don't grow up hating anybody. You know what I'm saying? We grow up kind of affected by the elements and the circumstances we were put into or forced into, as early as they may be, as late as they may be. But our parents don't teach us to hate anybody. You know what I'm saying? The white supremacy, on the other hand, y'all are really fucking ignorant. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, your mama say, hey, that's a Negro. And you kind of be forced to believe that because that's your mother. This is who gives you your lessons and things of that nature. But it's just sad, man. You know, even down to like how blatant and disrespectful y'all are. Like to say that the U.S. was established in 1607. That's a lie. And it's facts, it's books. It shows that it was people here in 1500s. So how was this established in 1670? Are y'all that scared of our reparation? We don't deserve that, man. God damn, y'all trying to steal everything. Y'all just took the word aloha. That's not in your language, man, nigga. God damn. I'm not sure if you guys know or not, but Mike Brown's mother is now running for city council. So I'm gonna run her commercial at the end of this. Y'all go find that info. Make sure y'all get out there and vote. Cause it's time for a change, man. It's time for a change. St. Louis, I'm rocking. You know what I'm saying? I'm Virginia. 2 times. They know that. You know what I'm saying? But I was just so devastated by y'all's history of this police versus the citizen stuff that I just felt like morally obligated. I had to contribute where I can contribute.
Almost 4 years ago to this day, I ran down this very street. And my son was covered in a sheet. It broke me, you know? It brought me down to my knees. That made me feel crippled, as if I could do nothing else anymore from that moment. But as time went on and I stayed surrounded by support and motivational people who knew what happened was wrong and didn't give up the fight, I learned to walk again. And this is one of my first steps, running for Ferguson City Council of 2019. This is so important to me, and I know a lot of people may ask what makes me qualified, but I'll tell you, if a mother had to watch her son lay in the street for 4.5 hours and watch a community be completely disrespected by elected officials that we elected, what would you do? you would stand up and you would fight too. I'm not going to give up. And when I'm elected, I will be the people's voice and not just the people's choice.
The reason why it got so big is that they did that boy like that. They shot him in the top of his head, left him out there, disrespected him. The people rose up, and the local police was so disrespectful that the people just took over the town.
I'm in a position to talk to these kids and they listen. I ain't no politician, but I trapped and did go to prison. Now I'm caught up in a system where the motive's apparent. I'm just a product of the apartments probably built for my parents or my parent, but who caring? They planted gold figure. Cop killing me, just a nigga. We protest gorillas.